Hi everyone, it's Bob with Celtech Productions. Last week I had the great opportunity to tour the Popp Rock Shop and studio in Jacksonville, Florida. The owner and creator of this space, Joe Popp, has had an interesting and amazing journey in the music industry. As you'll see in this video, he has worked in and mastered many creative disciplines. Currently, Joe is a working singer-songwriter, theatrical composer, and he still records with his eponymous band, Joe Popp, formed in 1995. I won't steal Joe's thunder here, but the Popp Rock Shop specializes in handmade guitar and studio gear of the highest quality. But most importantly, Joe is an amazing human being. Here's my visit with Joe and the Popp Rock Shop. Well, hey, Joe. It's good to be back in the Popp Rock Shop. How are you?
Doing great.
Yeah, thanks for having me here to have this conversation with you today. Joe, you've had a fascinating career in the music industry, and it's so interesting to me how much it's crossed over into a bunch of different interesting things. So we're going to get a chance to talk about all that today. And I know we're gonna do a studio tour and a shop tour later, but I thought maybe you could tell the folks a little bit about this space, about what this used to be, and what you created here, and maybe a little bit on how you're going to use it.
Okay. It started out as a one-car garage, and the previous owner, we bought the house with this garage behind it for the specific purpose of me building this studio. He was a iron worker. He made those iron bars that kind of go along your steps and things like that. So it had a big drill press in here, but it was just a wood frame, you know, no attic or anything like that. So I had walls put in, I had a bathroom installed, and you know, after the walls were built, I did most of the other work myself, adding the acoustic panels and things like that. Wiring it, I put all the wire in before they put the walls up, so I have quite a few patch points in here, probably too many, but I'm a wiring guy, so I kind of went nuts. The purpose of the space is threefold, actually. It's a workshop. I build amplifiers, cables, and guitar gadgets like pedals and things like that. I also am a performer, so I have a performance space that I could shoot videos in, and I even have stage lighting for that. And then the third purpose is a recording studio. So I have those three elements all combined together, and it's a very compact space. It's less than 300 square feet, so I had to do a lot of creative multi-use type things, you know, things that slide, things that turn around, and, you know, we'll look at some of that stuff, you know.
Yeah, that's part of your creativity there coming in, what you've done with this space. It's really great, Joe.
Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your background. So we'll start with with music, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it probably all got started when you were a young man and your family moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and you started taking, I don't know if you took guitar lessons, but you took up guitar and started playing and formed some bands. Tell a little bit about your Jacksonville experience.
Yeah, my family moved to Jacksonville in 1977 when I was 12 years old. And I'd always wanted to play guitar, and they were going to get me started in New Jersey, but we were too busy with moving and all that stuff. So when we came here, I took a community school 12-week course with a bunch of other kids, and I just really took to it. So I started writing songs when I was 12, pretty bad songs, and you know, just kept playing like that. But I got into some bands in Jacksonville. I was in a band called 1 Minute Father, and we played at Einstein A Go-Go, which is a very famous beach club that introduced a lot of bands in Jacksonville, national bands that became big by playing at Einstein A Go-Go. So it was a really great place for me to play.
So how old were you when you started your first band?
I was probably 18 or 19,
okay.
I think, yeah. So, you know, I had been playing, and I did some solo things at school, you know, talent shows and things like that, but my first band was probably 85 or 6. Was in 1 Minute Father, and then I was in another band called My Favorite Pajamas, and then I was in a band called Ant Farm, and that was my last band before I left Jax to go to go to Tampa. None of these bands really had any record deals. We did some cassette recordings, but never really any professional stuff.
I remember that. I started my first recorder was a four-track cassette recorder.
Same one.
That was
Tascam Porta 1.
Yeah,
was my
that's
first
exactly
recorder.
what I had. You could mix and everything.
Oh, it was fantastic.
You remember taking 3 tracks and bouncing it down to the 4th, then you'd have 3, and you'd bounce it down to 2. It was kind of crazy.
I did that, and when I got into MIDI, I learned to print what was called FSK on the 4th track, and I could sync my MIDI sequencer setup to the other 3 tracks on the recorder.
I remember doing that in Cakewalk, Stripe and SMPTE timecode.
Right, yeah.
Same thing,
FSK is the poor man's version of SMPTE.
Okay.
So I didn't have a big box to do it, so it would just come out of my drum machine.
Yeah.
And I'd print that, and then I'd, bounce the other 3 tracks and leave the FSK on one and use all my synthesizers to fill out the rest.
Yeah, that was pretty cool technology back in the 90s, I guess.
Yeah. We had to work hard back then.
Yeah,
now
that was
a lot easier.
Yeah, not like it is today for sure. So Tampa really opened up things for you, right? Let's talk a little bit about. I think you had some bands that were doing well enough that became opening acts, and I'm thinking Green Day is one of the bands that comes to mind. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I moved to Tampa in 1990. I was getting a little just disenchanted with Jacksonville as far as, I wanted to try to broaden my horizons. And I had recorded a band called Dogs on Ice in Tampa, and their guitar player left, and they asked me to join. And so I was like, okay, I got nothing else going on, let's do that. So I left my job at American Music Store on the west side, and I went down to Tampa and joined Dogs on Ice, and we ended up getting a small record deal with it was actually Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys. His graphic artist had a label, and we got on that label and did some great things, opened for Green Day at a place called the Brass Mug, but just 2 weeks before they got signed to their big Warner Brothers deal. But they were still a very popular band. I mean, they sold a lot of records even before they went to the major label. So that was a really amazing thing to have happen in Dogs on Ice. And then 95, I became my own band, just Joe Popp. I was getting tired of losing my marketing every time the band broke up, so I kind of just went with my own name. And that band was together for a couple of years, and we opened for a lot of bands. Cheap Trick, Joan Jett, Mike Watt, a lot of punk bands, a lot of rock bands. We were kind of in between, and I'm wondering if that was we never made it big because we were between the punk and the rock. So
yeah, gotcha. And you had a lot of other stuff going on in Tampa as well. So between studio work and acting and voiceovers, what else did you do in Tampa?
Well, for the first couple of years, I worked at Holland & Knight, a law firm, just as a documents clerk, and then I got a job at Busch Gardens as a stagehand, and I was only there a couple of months when I was asked to be in the steel drum band by a guy who was in the band. And I'm like, I don't know how to play drums. He's like, you play guitar? This is a 5-note pan. You have a 20% chance of hitting the right note. So I got a videotape and learned the show that they were doing, which was like Hot, Hot, Hot and Yellowbird and all these Jamaican classics. And I ended up doing that for 3 years. It was a great job,
And that was called Sounds of Steel?
Sounds of Steel, yeah.
We have a video clip of that that I'd like to show, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Yeah, so roll the clip.
Thank you very much. I'm Mark Summers, and welcome to What Would You Do? This great band from Busch Gardens, and this is their leader, Mark. How long have you been playing together?
Oh, about 2 years.
2 years. And let's say you are who?
Joel Bronson.
Nice to see you. And you are?
Joe Popp.
And who are you?
Dave Holmstrand.
Now, all these drums are a little bit different, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah. Now, these are what? The tops of what kind of containers?
This is actually an oil barrel.
And it makes all sorts of different sounds, right? Go ahead and hit up there. And that's beautiful. That is beautiful. And how many years does it take to perfect this?
To perfect it, you have to keep playing years and years to perfect it. I don't think you ever really perfect it.
Probably not, huh? Well,
Yeah, that was a fun clip to watch, Joe. Yeah, thanks.
That was a great job.
Yeah, thanks for that. So how about theater? And you did some theater work and some sound design. You actually did some composing as well, and performing, right?
Right, yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I was asked to do a play in 1993 by a woman named Val Day, who had a small theater company, and she was trying to involve some of the local creatives in theater as opposed to traditional actors. So I did this play with her called Pitchfork Disney. That I had a weird, like I was a monster and I sang this really creepy song. And then after that, she hired me to compose music for a show called Why the Wine Ebor, which was written by a famous New York playwright named Mac Wellman, who I knew nothing about. I was not a theater guy. And that was my first foray into that. And I ended up doing a lot of composition, a lot of sound design, but I really liked the composition better, of course. And I wound up doing a adaptation of Macbeth for American Stage in the Park, which was their big Shakespeare in the Park at Janus Landing in St. Petersburg, Florida. And a crazy response, like 20,000 people ended up coming over like 5.5 weeks of performances, and that was a pretty cool thing. Wow. And we actually remounted that show just last year in Seattle, 27 years later. So that's a pretty funny story.
Very cool, Joe. Yeah. I think we can probably go on to New York now.
Sure.
Yeah, so a lot going on there. So you were a recording studio tech. You did a lot of technical work. Actually, had a 22-year career with City College of New York.
Yeah, they have a program called the Sonic Arts Center, and I was hired as the technical director to rebuild this. They have 7 studios, and they were kind of getting long in the tooth. So I was hired. I was working at another studio called City Sound as the studio manager and tech there. And I was looking for something more stable, you know, with the changing economy, so I thought going to a college would be a good move. One of my interns tipped me off and said, "You'd be great at this job, you should apply for it." And there was like 800 applicants or something, and I'm like, I'm never gonna get this job. And they ended up hiring me, and I ended up staying there for 22 years. But it's a brilliant recording program. The director is Paul Kozel, who is a very passionate individual. They typically have around 50 students between the 4 years of where they are in the program. And it's a great facility. I mean, they have 2 big live rooms. The concert hall is actually a recording space. The jazz performance room is also a recording space. So those are all wired together. And I really got my wiring chops super sharpened at that place. A lot of connections, yeah.
I bet so. And speaking of connections, those kind of industry contacts led you to Tower Music Project, right?
Yeah, that was an amazing project by composer Joseph Bertolozzi. He had done another project called the Bridge Music, where he beat on the Mid-Hudson Bridge with mallets and hammers and stuff and recorded it,
right,
and made a composition out of it. And he had the idea to do this with the Eiffel Tower. And I think this is some of the part of just being in New York, that this wouldn't have happened anywhere else, because this composer was looking for a crew to record the project. And my boss, Paul Kozel, and my assistant at the time, Brian Trent, were going to do it. And Brian Trent had to back out at the last minute. They asked me, and I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And we spent 2.5 weeks on the Eiffel Tower recording samples of the legs, stairs, elevators, all kinds of interesting sounds. It was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had as a recording engineer, for sure.
Yeah, so how many recording engineers do you know that got to go to the Eiffel Tower and got to do something like that? So
yeah, just me and Paul Kozel.
That's such an interesting project. I'm going to show a little clip of that with you putting the sensors on the railings and stuff, and Joseph Bertolozzi beating on the railings and stuff, trying to get tones out of it, right? He's trying to get pitches and tones.
Samples, yeah.
And you'll see on this clip, he actually writes, I think, B flat on one of them. It's like, this is the tone he's capturing. So let's roll that clip. that had to be fun. So I mean, and you
Oh,
got to,
yeah.
you got to go to Paris, right?
Yeah, I mean, 2 weeks, you know, every day on the Eiffel Tower. It's fantastic. I mean, it's just like a dream recording gig.
Yeah, and so, you know, speaking of interesting projects, you took one on yourself, I believe, like in 2016, something like that.
2015, we shot the pilot, yeah.
For the Popp Over America.
Right.
So tell us about that. Tell us about your idea. It's like, here's my idea, and here's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I had this crazy idea, like I wanted to play in every state in the country. I originally wanted to do all 50, but getting to Hawaii and Alaska were kind of expensive and time consuming. So I decided to do a tour of the 48 contiguous United States all in a row and play in every state. Not necessarily a gig, but just play, you know, acoustic guitar as a singer-songwriter in every state. And I came up with this mounting system. Jeff Hoffey makes these carbon fiber guitar cases that are just incredible. And I used one on my tour and figured out how to mount it using a luggage system made by a company called Jeevy. And I put this on my bike and it performed beautifully. It was waterproof, it was weatherproof, and I ended up doing the tour 95 days, 16,000 miles. And I played sometimes on the side of the road, I played in the Grand Canyon, you know, I played at the Four Corners where the 4 states meet, so I got to do 4 states with 1 gig, you know, so that was pretty cool.
And so you left from New York on this journey.
I actually left from Florida is where I started.
Okay, so the East Coast, I guess, is what I'm thinking, and it's about 2,000 miles to get to the West Coast and about 2,000 miles back. So there's a 4,000-mile round trip that I would dread in a car, and you did it on not only a round trip, but multiply that about 4 times because you did 16,000 miles.
Yeah, it was like
so
a big circle.
You're zigzagging all over the country.
Yep, yep.
Right?
And I have a map of it, and it's pretty insane. You know, the map is like, it's all like this, you know.
Who does that, Joe?
Crazy people like me, I guess, you know, are bored or just, and I've always been up for interesting things, you know, like that's why I got into the theater and that's why I got into acting and why, you know, I love music and I love performing, but I have so many other creative outlets. Like that's why I build handmade amps and handmade pedals because I'm just very interested in creating all kinds of different things.
Yeah, so the Popp Over America, the host series, you have that on your channel, right? Or on your website.
I shot a pilot episode which was very professionally produced.
My name is Joe Popp.
No, you never heard of me before. Probably because I've never focused on doing just one thing. I've been a skateboarder, movie actor, amplifier builder, steel drummer, playwright, motorcyclist, effects pedal creator, comedian, Eiffel Tower sound recordist, punk rocker, filmmaker, recording studio designer, singer-songwriter, computer tech, theater actor, and a professor of rock. I've led a charmed life, but I'm still hungry for more adventure. Middle age has passed me by, but I'm not letting a small detail like that stop me from taking one last epic journey. A non-stop tour of the 48 contiguous United States as a singer-songwriter on a motorcycle. Follow along as I meet people, visit places of interest, eat the food of America, and play concerts as I zigzag on my bike across the country. I'll also be surprising folks with pop-up performances everywhere and anywhere I can. You'll never guess where I'll show up next. So hop aboard and join me for the ride of a lifetime. Man, bike, guitar.
Popp Over America.
It's very cool, and we'll put a link in the description so that people can go look at the Eiffel Tower project and the Popp Over America videos that you have published. So,
Great.
I'm excited to do a tour of your space here.
All right.
So why don't we go do that?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, so this is a mini tour of my studio, and we'll start over here in the kitchen. So what I did over here is I used this slat wall stuff, and I like it because it has all these movable hooks. You can kind of configure it any way you like. I also use this on my workshop, which we'll look at in a minute. And I already had this Husky cabinet, and I bought this one that's not quite as deep so the door can swing open. And then I bought this one. This is my old desktop that I chopped up. And I like to repurpose things. So I already had this cabinet. I already had the desktop. This Marshall fridge was a gift from an old stagehand friend of mine, Harley Whitehurst. It's not an amp. It's actually a fridge. I got a Keurig with some coffee pods there, a microwave, and storage up here. Storage is a really big thing here because I just have so little space. It's less than 300 square feet. And I have this little old library kick stool so I can pull these down if I need to. Construction-wise, I use all these programmable wafer lights, and they are any color you want in the rainbow. And moving over here to my workbench, more slat wall, and you can see I have all this stuff, and I even custom adapted a lot of these things. Like these bins, I actually made clips for them, and I have a video on this which we'll put in the comments or in the description. One in, just a nice thick slab of butcher block there, put on a filing cabinet. That was an old trick my dad used to use. And you can see there's a computer monitor here on a reticulating arm, and this actually goes up into a closet I have up there. And what this is I created a little plenum here. There's a gasket and a shelf. There's a computer with an Ethernet switch, a hard drive, and a DMX adapter to Ethernet for the lighting system that I have. So this closes, and you can see there's an intake fan and there's an exhaust fan. So it funnels it cycles the cool air through the plenum up there to keep the gear cold. And moving on, some other things. So this is a neat idea. I use these IKEA Calyx cabinets, and these function not only as storage units. You could see the back. It's got more of my numbered bins right there. And on this side, I can roll this around the room and use it as a separator between two musicians. This is really great stuff. It's 3/8 inch of felt, and then it has these MDF boards on here, and it really is great because it increases the surface area so you reduce the early reflections of the room. Moving around, I have way up here, you can see I have 4 stage lights up here. These are LEDs, and these are special because they're fanless. There's no fans in the lights to make noise when I'm recording. I also have a stereo pair of mics up there. There's an alarm system and a security camera up there. And this lighting is controlled through DMX, and DMX is a lighting protocol, and I adapted that to Ethernet so that either one of my computers can control the lighting. I can set the lights any way which I want. They're totally programmable, anything you want to do. Air conditioner is very simple. It's just a Mitsubishi mini split. I have that on Alexa so I can control the lighting or the air conditioning any which way I want. This cabinet also flips around, so you can see just like my little Calyx over there, this can actually become a studio wall for my desk. So I can actually flip this all the way around like so. And then I can sit in my mix position over here and have a wall that's higher than my head, which is a really great, great thing to have. And then when I'm done, I just can roll it back into place when I'm finished with it. So that's these function both as rolling gobos, and I can use them for any kind of setup. If I have a couple acoustic guitars or something in here, it's really great for, the recordings. Over here I have a 5-hook guitar hanger. You see a bunch of sound panels here. These are just hung with Z-clips on the wall. Some of them I built, some of them I bought. And you can see the studio wall over here. This is the studio setup. And you'll see a patch bay here. So I have over 40 channels routed through the walls that I put through the walls before they put the drywall up. And that all comes to this patch bay right here. So in the walls, I have over 40 channels. There's some in the ceiling that go to the attic. There's patch panels on the wall, and then you can see my patch bay here has all the indicators, and I can take a patch cord. So for instance, I can take an input from the closet and I can go right into my interface if I want to do that. Pretty simple. And we could take a look at one of these panels over here if you want to see how I have the patching done. So I'm pretty much a patch freak. And you can see I have 4 mic channels here. There's 2 combo connectors, so those can function as inputs or outputs. I have 2 outputs, and I have a DB25 that has 8 channels on it. And I also have 2 Ethernet jacks. I have 10 Ethernet patch points all over the place, and those can be totally patched together, and you can also send audio or 4K video down those as well. So it's a really neat system. And you can see I have power outlets everywhere as well. But this wire is actually run through the wall, back behind my desk and to the patch bay. And I have 16 channels here, 16 channels on the other wall, and 8 in the ceiling. So my studio desk, I wanted to keep this fairly simple. I didn't want a bunch of outboard gear, but I do like outboard preamps, so I have this Heritage OST 8 ADAT, which you can put 500 series modules in, and it feeds into my interface through an ADAT connection. So I get 8 more channels that instead of just the 2 on my Apollo Twin, which is really handy. I love this desk. This is a Wavebone desk. It's got 2 3-space racks. It actually has a 3rd one here, but I decided to leave that open so I can stick my stuff under there when I'm recording or doing anything like that. I have a 27-inch monitor on a reticulating arm, Mac Pro, or Mac Studio rather, with a really great OWC drive, 4 terabytes attached to that. And you can see I have another, my TV also functions as another additional monitor for my computer. It also has TV on it, and I have a sound bar with a subwoofer for that. And I have these Kali monitors as my main monitors. The cool thing is I can switch between these Kalis and the sound bar to get 2 different, see how the mix sounds on 2 different devices, which is pretty nice. And for, again, more small space stuff, I have a keyboard on this crank table here, and I can just raise this up if I want and work on my keyboard if I want to do that. And when I want to get it out of the way, I just crank it back down and push it back out of the way. And that's great because I used to have a keyboard stand next to me. It just took up too much space. Moving on to some sound treatment stuff. I love this acoustic slat wall, they call it. Again, this is the 3/8 of felt with this, I guess it's about 1/2 inch of this MDF walnut on the outside. And that really helps with the early reflections. It helps diffuse that echoey sound. So in here, you don't get these echo things. This is a really cool device I made. This is a door plug, and this is a sound panel. We'll take it out. You can move that out of the way for now. And that's the door that goes to the street. And I have this little kick panel here that's on Velcro. So when I'm doing a critical recording and I want to block the street noise, I can put in the door plug and the kick plate, and then I have a little more acoustic treatment. So part of Popp Rock Shop is I build hand-wired amps, cables, and guitar pedals. This amp here is sort of my model number. It's called the JP50, and it's modeled after this Marshall 1980 JMP50 master volume. So it's very close, but you can see it's got some little extra doodads on it that the Marshall doesn't have. And I developed these a few years ago, and you know, my little take, it's not, I didn't really develop it, it's just I made sort of a clone and did some adjustments to it, and now I produce those. I also make guitar pedals, and this is one I have. This is called the Serpicon, which is a spin on Serpico the movie. I use all 70s movies, and these are all hand-wired. There's no guts in this one, but some connectors, but these are all hand-wired by me. I'm going to start cranking that up again as soon as I can. And I have a few other models. I have the Fuzz Day Afternoon, which is again another spin on a 70s movie. And you can see I got Al Pacino's face on there. And this one does have guts in it. So you can see it's all hand-wired NOS old components, you know, carbon comp resistors, and you know, everything in here is from a different time. But I'm going to start making these again. So here's the Popp Rock Shop bathroom, and it's nothing crazy, just your normal bathroom. I went with a lot of these squarish type fixtures, sink, there's a full shower here, toilet. But one of the funny things about this is I have two inputs right here, and I got this idea from Prince. He had his whole house was wired, so even if he was sitting on the toilet, he could record. So I appropriately named these number 1 and number 2. They're the first 2 channels on the patch bay.
I like the shower curtain.
Yeah, custom custom logo. This is like $7 on Amazon. It's crazy how cheap it was. All right, so that's the studio tour of Popp Rock Shop. Please check out our website, popprockshop.com. That's P-O-P-P. And we'll see you real soon.
All right, Joe, thanks for that tour. That was a great tour. I love the attention to detail, so thanks for showing us all that. And so, and we'll just, we can kind of wrap things up here. First of all, let me say congratulations to you. After 22 years at City College, you finally made that decision to retire, and Jacksonville's kind of like full circle for you now,
yep.
right? So you're back here
after 33 years.
Yeah,
come back.
Yep.
So.
Running around all over the country and the world,
yep.
And now you're back in Jacksonville. And so, do you want to tell the folks a little bit more about any more specifics on what you're creating here?
Yeah, Popp Rock Shop. My goal is to, again, threefold. I want to keep performing, use this as a rehearsal space. I want to make my products, the pedals and amps and cables, that I did a lot of that in 2019 when I was still in New York, and again, it fell by the wayside, so I'm going to try to get those things up for sale. And then, you know, my YouTube channel, I'm trying to get more interest in that. I'm doing a podcast with local Jacksonville musicians, and I'm also doing like a lot of things like you do, like instructional videos, how to make a guitar cable, how to use stem splitter, you know, these things like that. But my channel is pretty wide, but I could sure use some subscriptions. If anybody would subscribe to Popp Rock Shop on YouTube, that would be very helpful.
Well, I saw some of the content that you're creating, Joe, and so I'm a subscriber now. So
I appreciate
I love what
that.
you're doing here.
I'm one closer.
Yeah, I actually think, I mean, I always felt like I could build a guitar cable. Just give me a soldering gun and I put it together. But now I feel like I could do a professional one.
Great.
That was a very, very well done video on a guitar cable. And the good part about that, if you need a long one or a short one, you can go make your own now, right?
Yep.
And the other thing is you have the affiliate links in your description, so you can go get the same materials that you had or the tools that you're using.
Yep.
So anyway, I'm looking forward to more content from you. I'll be following that and try to do some of my own thing.
Well,
based on your instruction.
Thanks for having me on your channel, Bob. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, well, thanks again for the visit, and hopefully we can do this again and maybe get an update.
Well, you got to let me interview you next for my podcast, so we got to go back and forth.
Okay, Joe. I don't know if I have anything interesting to say, but we can talk about that.
We could just make it short.
Yeah, we'll make stuff up. How's that?
Even better.
Thanks again, Joe.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay.